going, YouTube? If you see in the background, this high quality graphics is the 3.16 launch trailer. And suffice to say, this launch looks like it's going to be one of the best leagues for this year, which is not saying much because Expedition Ultimatum was ultimately really bad. But this league has me pretty excited to play, and there are a lot of changes, but they did release a lot of the balance manifesto beforehand. Now, before anyone asks, aura stackers is definitely dead. And if you're trying to play an aura stacker, you're probably just a masochist and trying to make your life harder. So the way I'm going to go over this 3.16 league announcements, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to go over the good changes, some of the bad changes, the builds that got killed off, and what I predict will be the best league starters and the best endgame aspirational builds. Now, I'm going to try to keep this a little bit short, but you know how it is. There's a lot of stuff to get through. And I'm going to go over the league real fast because the Scourge League is pretty much, I believe that leagues are very important for the longevity of the game in terms of how long people can play a league. Because being able to play a league for like 1+ month really comes down to how good the league mechanic is. Like Expedition in the end was kind of a snooze fest. A lot of people didn't like having to interact with it in the maps and picking up all the currency. But this time, this league actually looks very promising, so I'm going to go over what the actual Scourge League is. So the league mechanic is basically, I would say it's kind of like incursion mixed with some sort of crafting element to it, like kind of volleying items. So basically the general gist of it is that you have this thing called Blood Crucible that you put into your, kind of implant it into your inventory. And this Blood Crucible fills up. You can see there's a bar on the top right here. So as you do a map or a zone, as you kill more mobs, the meter will fill up. And then once you fill it all the way up, you can activate this alternate reality that you get transported into. And I think loot drops within the zone and it will drop at the end. So how this works is that you put an item into the Blood Crucible and then it will store up corruption based on how many mobs you kill in this alternate reality. And once you get enough corruption, you can then use it to transform the item. So something interesting of note is that this gives you a positive implicit and a negative implicit. So the positive implicit is the +3 to 7 phys damage, and the negative implicit is the 29 intelligence requirement. So you can see some more of these items here. So every single item is going to have a positive and a negative. So, and there's also different tiers. So the first Scourge will take a certain amount of maps to get the amount of corruption you need to transform it. The second tier will take more, and the third tier will take even more. So you can see the third tier, some pretty good ones right here. +1 minimum frenzy charge. This one is conductivity on hit. And then the tier 1 ones are a lot less spectacular. You have 4% move speed and 20% lightning res. So this is pretty much exactly what the league revolves around. And you can do this to, so this is item, you have to put it into a Blood Crucible. The Blood Crucible is over here. And the nice part about this league mechanic is you don't really need to slow down or anything. You can just keep playing the map, you fill it up, and then you immediately press the Blood Crucible button, and then you get transported into the alternate realm. It gives you some more mobs to fight. There's no like putting down pylons or explosives and detonating it. It's just straight to the action. It's pretty fast. It's kind of like Ultimatum. Now, unlike Ultimatum, it actually has a lot of cool build enabling implicits, and some of this stuff is completely game breaking. Being able to get call to arms or note on a tree when you're nowhere near it is completely game changing for a lot of builds, especially when there's a notable like call to arms. So this could be absolutely crazy for so many builds, and it really expands the build diversity in PoE. And it also gives aspirational items, and this will make more items and builds be more unique. So you can see here, oh, someone has an item that has like some crazy, what's it called? Scourge corruption of the implicits, and that really makes builds feel more unique when you finish it off, and it gives you more things to go for, especially with the lack of a build like aura stackers. This could be exactly what PoE needs. So here you have these tainted orbs that you can use to modify corrupted items, since all of these items when you transform it will be corrupted. So this is pretty much replaces the Vol Orb recipe, and then you can easily fuse it, you can easily jeweler it, you usually use chromes. And here you can see kind of like a pseudo passive skill tree for the corruptions, and as you play through the game you can pretty much unlock every single one, so there's no real like hard choices you have to make towards the end. And you can see here this allows the items to absorb more corruption so you can transform it faster, so that's pretty cool. And then lastly, this is actually the part I'm most excited about. So you can put the map into your device and you can slowly scourge it up, right? So you can theoretically, there's 10 tiers of Scourge. So as you get higher and higher, the maps get harder and harder. So you can see there's actually some absurd rewards, right? So I don't know if there's actually any. So basically, there are some rewards later on. I don't know if they show it here, but you can pretty much get it so that each Scourge rare mob drops like 3 maps, and then each person drops like 7 additional currency items or something like that to that degree. A nice part about this is that you can actually do 100% delirium on this and then have 10 layers of Scourge. So this actually makes it probably some of the hardest endgame content that we will have to date. And lastly, you can see that there's some pretty cool unique items that will come out. This is probably the one that everyone is pretty excited about. It gives it so that your flasks last infinitely, so you can have 4 utility flasks going on. So the way I envision this belt is you pretty much use this as a headhunter replacement for bossing, and then you just have your flasks on constantly. Incredibly powerful belt. So this league hits it all in the right spots, right? It has a good league mechanic that's fun to interact with, that doesn't take too much time out of the map to do or set up. It has pretty good chase items in terms of uniques, and it also has build customization and something that will make you happy to interact with league mechanic, because you can be like, oh, I can improve my item this way. You can always keep trying to get a better and better item. Main thing I see as a problem is I think at a certain point, these rewards will not be as interesting. Like say you're like 1 month into the league, like I don't really know how fun and how much like thrill it will be to try to hit a corruption. We don't really know how rare some of these implicit corruptions are, so that would be something to keep in mind as the league goes on. So now let's talk about the good and bad changes, because besides the league, there was a lot of extra stuff they added, and some of these are actually insane. Now I'm going to go over the good changes real fast, and pretty much I'm just going to list out most of the stuff. And some of these things are pretty crazy. The good change number 1 is skill tree changes, and now there's something called mastery. So let's see down here if I can show you. So like now if you take this notable or little circle, so the skill tree looks completely different first of all. And now when you fill out this thing, you can take a mastery, which is pretty much like other nodes on a tree. So you have gained 3% of max ES. Discipline has reduced reservation, light radius based on ES, cannot be frozen. So there's a lot more new skill options. So you can see how big the skill tree is. And you can see every single one of these little clusters will have a mastery that you can choose. So this alone will completely change every single build in the game, or give them a lot more options. And it will pretty much make all build guides obsolete. Now something like this is good because the meta is pretty stale without like huge wide sweeping changes. Skill tree changes are the number 1 thing that can keep people interested in the game, and try to do more experimentation, because right now if you want to make a ranger build, you know exactly where to go for all the life nodes, and there's really no choices when it comes to the tree. So this is going to be absolutely huge, and I'm so glad they actually did this. Awaken support gems, they did revert their nerf from last league, and they also added some insane bonuses for some of the support gems. You have Awaken weapon elemental damage, which now gives you elemental reflect immunity, and this just adds more chase value to Cyrus. So it's really good that they listened to us on this. They're removing some of the bloat from previous leagues. Perandus is no longer in the game because they added Expedition League, and they did admit that they're going to remove the shitty leagues with the new league. So this is extremely good. There's some leagues that have no business to be in the game, like Talisman or stuff like that. And then new chase uniques. I did see a lot of uniques that look pretty good. There is a chest that allows you to have 100% of damage recouped over the 4 seconds. And then there's the new unique belt. There's even this new unique amulet that will give you like an extra, what's it called? It gives you, wait, they don't even have it here. It gives you like a pseudo 7 link. So there's a lot of items that are a lot better than previous leagues in terms of uniques. If everyone remember last league in Expedition, all of the uniques were hot garbage, besides maybe the flask. Aspirational content, definitely something they've added. They're trying to give you 30 waves in Simulacrum. Now you can do 100% deli, 10 layers of Scourge map, and builds that can do that are probably going to be a dime a dozen. And you also have some of the other crazy things like Delve is harder now. You can have like a Delve boss is more common, some more rewards from Delve. You can also have a Blight Ravage map. So there's a lot of extra things. There's a 5-way that's even harder. So it'd be really interesting to see what builds can actually accomplish to clear all this, especially after Aura Stackers, which was the best build in the game, have been completely wiped off the planet. Quality of life. This is actually an insane change that I should probably like make this like huge text, right? So they finally allow us to stack fragments. You can finally stack incubators. You can finally stack scarabs. And I don't really know why it takes so long for them to make some of these changes. You know, there's a saying in life like complaining never works. Well, that's just not true, because in PoE Reddit, the more you complain about something, the more likely it is to get fixed. If everyone just complains and don't play the game and make negative posts on Reddit, the sad fact is it actually works. They actually respond to the changes and they actually fix stuff. The case in point is guild hideouts. I don't really know how many times people have complained about the guild stash not being control clickable. And guess what? They said it was some technical limitation they could not fix. And guess what? You complain, 1 league later, control clickable guild stash with affinities. And that's just the power of complaining, I guess. And good integration of league mechanic that pretty much goes into like Scourge League just being pretty good. And I do think the Atlas progression is a lot better, especially with how streamlined and how many fewer watchstones. It'll be a lot easier for beginners to get into the game now that they don't need to worry about juggling 8 different regions and trying to make like these optimal combinations of the watchstone progression or leapfrogging. Everything is just a lot simpler and more streamlined and a lot easier to understand. Now, with the good, there has to come some bad, right? So let's go over some of the bad stuff. So a lot of these are a little bit nitpicky. They're not really like terrible. They're just stuff I don't really like, but it is what it is, right? Removed good Atlas passives. Now, Chris kind of lied to us on this one. I don't know if you like watched the stream, but he did say that they remove the nodes that no one took. And come on, some of the nodes definitely everyone took. Who was playing Uvastir and didn't take emblematic? So the ones that are in white were removed. These ones were definitely taken. Everyone took each legion and Ares complaint extra warhorde. And this is just like, it's just kind of sad that these are gone, but it is what it is, right? If stuff is gone, the other stuff will be good. So some of this stuff like Nature's Favor, if you were farming harvest, this was taken a lot. I don't know about wild fruit. This one is repeated experiment. People took a good amount, and then like extra June mission on completion. Everyone takes this if you actually try to farm June missions. And what is the main thing I was sad about is emblematic, and some of the maps being removed kind of suck. Like burial chambers being gone. How are people going to get doctor cards now? But people definitely took like delirium encounters and areas have 3 additional rewards. I'm pretty sure everyone took these things for delving, right? And definitely people took the blight encounter stuff. But the sad fact is that there's got to be sacrifices made, right? Because they don't really have enough nodes. So definitely there were some nodes that were taken out, but it's just kind of sad. Emblematic is gone. It's definitely a very small complaint, right? It's not that big. But then the Trickster Ghost Shroud replacement, people are really angry about. So they did rework some of the ascendancies. I think Gladiator was a little bit better than the Trickster variant. And it remains to be seen how the reaction will be to people complaining about it, because this is probably one of the biggest complaints right now. And I do agree with it, because you used to have Ghost Shroud on Trickster, where it gives you ES recovery when you evade or something. And now it's replaced by you don't take damage over time for 5 seconds out of 10 seconds. And it's just a very mediocre ascendancy point to get replaced by. Replica Forbidden Shaco effectively removed. I'm not too sure about this. It's Replica Forbidden Shaco no longer exists, and now Forbidden Shaco drops from Sacred Blossom boss, but the Sacred Blossom from Harvest is so rare, so I don't really know how that's going to work. Rolling Flask is going to be really bad. I don't know if you guys saw in the patch notes, Flasks now have different tiers, so you have to get the right item level for the Flask, and then you have to roll. You have to hit 2 rolls on the Flask with different tiers, and then they might be even weighted lower, like lower weighting. So it's kind of like trying to roll like Tyrannical with Celebration or something on a weapon. So that's going to be really annoying. Sacred Orbs, I believe, really add nothing to the game. It pretty much adds an orb to solve a problem that no one really cared about. So basically, the way that Sacred Orbs are is that every single item now has like a base implicit role for the armor, evasion, or energy shield, and it role cannot be changed unless you use a Sacred Orb. So it's kind of like a Blessed Orb, but the orb is really rare. So this is like 3 times rarer than Exalt. So this is more of an item to like perfect your mirror item, but it's just kind of like a useless orb in terms of adding depth to the game. And I don't really know why they added it, but they obviously felt like it was necessary to make more drops feel better. And then this is actually the worst one. And I do know that they added a lot of great changes in this league, but sometimes you just can't do it all, right? So you nerf aura, alt quality, and aura bots and aura stackers are dead. So it would be nice to see some alt quality aura buffs so that they're kind of useful again instead of like 0.1% move speed or something like that. And skill gem buffs. If you look through the patch notes, there are zero skill gem buffs that are meaningful. So they like buff like Voltaxic Burst, and what they do to buff Voltaxic Burst and Explosive Concoction is just kind of pathetic. It really shows like you just can't toss and make a skill deal more damage and hope that it will actually be better. The skill is terrible mechanically. Giving you 1% base crit and like 10% faster attack speed is not going to change anything with Explosive Concoction. And the funny thing is they actually said that they tested it and that the skill was more than viable now, so I don't really know about that. Now, if you want to see some real meme stuff, let's go over the real meme changes. And these are the ones that are just, I think they're trolling. Like they're actually trying to make us laugh. So in this like manifesto, they put some stuff like problems, right? So the problem here is Spectral Throw sucks, right? No one uses Spectral Throw to level with. And you know why no one uses Spectral Throw? According to GGG, Spectral Throw has a higher mana cost compared with other starting skills, resulting in it being difficult to use in the early game without constantly running out of mana. The answer is no. No one is using Spectral Throw because the skill sucks because it does too little damage, not because it does lower mana cost. So I guess Spectral Throw will be viable now because it has a base mana cost of 5 instead of 7, up to 8 at level 20, previously 9. I just have no idea how you can come up with this change for Spectral Throw and think that it's going to be viable. So this is definitely a meme change. That's something that they threw in just to make us laugh, because no one in their right mind actually thinks that lowering the mana cost of the skill by 1 makes a big difference when the skill just does atrocious damage because of its base damage. Another meme change is this Aziri's unique drop. So now Pledge of Hands drops from Uber Aziri, and Aziri's Disfavor now drops from regular Aziri. So instead of buffing Aziri's Disfavor that everyone was complaining about, they just say, oh well, fuck Aziri's Disfavor. We're just going to make it so it drops from Aziri so that you can't complain that the item doesn't match the power that it should have. So that's kind of a weird change to do, but it is what it is. So now let's talk about the builds that died, because this is actually pretty important, because these are the builds that you can no longer play anymore, whether it's because it's weak or it's just so bad now because of all the nerfs. So these nerfs are probably pretty expected for these builds that died. I don't think like anyone really thought that these builds were like super balanced or not like a little bit over the top over two. Now, you know, the way that GGG does it is they would just want to obliterate the skill off the face of the planet if it's too strong. So Spectral Shield Throw, I think it's like a 25-30% damage nerf. So they made it so that the skill has half the base damage now. And so where is it? Where's Spectral Shield Throw? Man, their patch notes were pretty crazy, right? This formatting with the spoilers, it kind of makes it hard to like control F stuff. Oh yeah, so it's shield skills. So a lot of the shield skills are just blatantly overpowered, they've admitted. So now Spectral Shield Throw does like half the base damage, 203 compared to 399 at the low end. And it also scales less per point of armor and evasion, 15. So now it's 5 to 7 instead of 6 to 8. And that's a pretty significant half base damage and lower scaling. And then they also have the Seeding Fury Jewel being 0.15 base crit instead of 0.2. And then the Lab Enchant is now 3 shards instead of 5. So you can see they did this like triple nerf. The Lab Enchant, the Unique Jewel, and the Spectral Shield Throw base damage along with the scaling. So Spectral Shield Throw is probably dead in terms of being like a super OP skill that everyone will play. Forbidden Right totems got completely destroyed. I think Totem Life got changed or something, so it's just completely not viable anymore. Syndicate Specters, and I think a lot of minions in general are a lot weaker, especially in the very, very late game because of the removal of aura clusters. And more importantly, for Syndicate Specters, they fixed something with shotgunning or something with Syndicate Spectre shotgunning. So that remains to be seen how much of a damage loss that will be. And Aura Stackers, as you all know, our beloved Aura Stacker is dead in terms of being a top tier build. So I don't really recommend anyone playing it unless you really want to experience some old school magic. And then you have Zero Channeling Perma Berserk build. So there's like some pretty popular builds that came out with Cyclone with Perma Berserk and then Winter Orb from last league with Perma Berserk. So these builds have been destroyed because of unwavering focus. So people used to stack these cluster jewels so that the cost of channel skills are 0, and then you would use Chainbreaker and just stack mana regen, and you get infinite rage regen for Perma Berserk. So they pretty much just removed the reduced cost of channeling skills, so no longer available to get 0 mana costs. But those builds are kind of dead. So these are some of the most popular builds, like right here. Spectral Shield Throw, Forbidden Right Totems, Syndicate Specters, Syndicate Operative Specters, or Stackers, and these builds probably made up like a good chunk of PoE Ninja. Let's see. So like if you look at PoE Ninja from Expedition League, this build is heavily nerfed, heavily nerfed, heavily nerfed. Forbidden Right. This is another nerf build. Spark is literally Aura Stacker, so nerfed. And you can see that they really wanted to do a little meta shift up. So if I had to say what's going to be the most popular build, it's probably going to be Toxic Rain and Cast on Crit, some variant of Cast on Crit, Ice Nova, Ice Spear, or who knows, maybe even Reap or Forbidden Right. People love Cast on Crit. So now let's go over some of the league starters that I think will be the best for 3.16. And this is all just my opinion. We don't really know how good builds will be without the Path of Exile, Path of Building Mastery, and the skill tree. The skill tree will make a lot of things more apparent. But some of these builds are going to be guaranteed to be good. And I think most of the ones in here that I listed are very strong. So these are the builds, league starters, that I think that if you want to go with something that's guaranteed to be good, these are the ones that I will recommend for now. And I will try to play through each of these builds on stream with the leveling experience, some low level mapping, and then have a POB. But it's kind of really hard to give out POBs for any of this stuff with the skill tree not being released, and because the skill tree really matters a lot. But at this point, I can confidently say that most of these builds will be super strong for the start. And I'm going to go over what exactly each of these builds excels at. So Toxic Rain is a build that really got away with a lot of, it's literally a build that got buffed because they changed how dot multi works, and they added a lot more sources for dot multiplier and damage over time because they nerfed Elemental Equilibrium and Elemental Overload for dot builds. So in order to compensate for the nerf, they buffed damage over time. But Toxic Rain does not benefit because it's a chaos spell, so it never really got affected by Elemental Overload or EE. So it just pretty much got a damage buff straight up. Now Toxic Rain is probably the best like overall out of all of these in that it's good in map clear, it's good in bossing, it's just a very strong skill overall. But it's not really the fastest build in the world. You could use Caustic Arrow as your map clear. But I definitely highly recommend anyone who's new, who's starting out, who want a pretty easy one-button build. Toxic Rain is definitely up there for the best league start. And you can play it on a lot of different classes. You can be a champion if you want to be super tanky, or you can be a raider, or even like a trickster. And even, I don't know, there's a lot of different options. The skill is just that good. Now, Spellslinger is a build that kind of got buffed because of the aura reservation changes. So now you will not really struggle so hard with your mana when you play Spellslinger because you will take like, what's it called? Like Charisma, or not Charisma, but whatever that node is in the Templar area. Any aura reservation will help out a lot because of the way that aura reservation formula is. So anytime you have below like 50% reduced mana reserved, then you will gain a lot from how much mana you'll reserve. That means you can probably run more links on your Spellslinger for leveling, or even another skill. And there's a lot of different Spellslinger variants. You can play the Chaos Slinger. I think this uses like Soul Rend or Essence Drain Contagion or whatever. I don't really know. You can play Eye of Winter Occultist with Hydra Spear and Eye of Winter. You can play Sanguinate Reap on, I think it's on Ascendant. And Corrupting Fever, I think, is the build with Gladiator. Then you could also play like Volatile Dead, Detonate Dead with Necromancer. So there's a lot of different variants. I don't really know full out how all of these builds will be, but I do know they're very strong for getting you through the campaign, the white maps and yellow maps. And most of these builds will take you through reds and then start struggling a little bit without more gear investment and doing like high red bosses. So this build is more of like a smooth leveling experience with some smooth mapping. This is an all-arounder. And then you get to these builds that are kind of a lot worse on map clear, but are very, very strong bossers. So you have Seismic Track with Saboteur and just any trappers in general. Yeah, I think you use Explosive Trap, Ice Trap, and trappers just scale amazingly well with almost no gear. Playstyle is really annoying though. And then you have General's Cry, which I believe is probably one of the strongest builds for bossing, and it requires virtually almost no gear. And this will allow you to do Feared and a lot of bosses pretty early on, get your Maven points set up. And then you have another all-rounder build, which I think kind of got overlooked because of how good, what's it called? Forbidden Right totems are, is Freeze Post totems. Freeze Post totems is very strong. And it also helps out that you have more curse effect reduction, so you don't need to run 2 Kikizarus anymore. And then you have the transition builds, and these are just like kind of like ballpark builds. I don't really know exactly if it will be the best. So let's go. Let's see. We can see. So now we have Doomfletch Prism Tornado Shot. And this can be played on either Berserker or Deadeye. Now, I will provide like pods later on as we get closer once we have these builds set in stone. And then you have Self-Cast Forbidden Right, which Rue made, which is very, very strong. I think this is probably going to be one of the best builds, purely because it didn't really get touched, and if anything, it got buffed from all the changes. And then I think Frostblade / Lightning Strike with like a Berserker or Raider is something that will be really, really strong. And I think if you wanted to add on, I think what are the strength stacking, like Cyclone or any of the strength stacking Iron Will builds will be very good. And this is because you can now get Iron Will on the passive tree, and you can now free up a glove slot and potentially a helmet slot to get like crit chance per 10 strength or something like that. And now people always want to ask me about aspirational builds towards the end game. And let's see, what do I think are the super endgame builds? So the super endgame builds are, as I think here, Instacker I think will be probably one of the best builds in the game. It is pretty much buffed for sure. You have a little bit more ES. It was already one of the best builds. It has amazing clear. Survivability is not the best. Its single target is out of this world. And it's just a build that you can pump a lot of currency into. You can spend a lot of money on an Instacker, and it's kind of like, I feel like the aura stackers. Like if you notice a trend here, is stackers are always overpowered, and the reason with that is because you scale your defense and damage at the same time. Accuracy stacker is another build. Now accuracy stacker can be played with Lightning Strike, with claws, or you can play it with bow and play like Tornado Shot or something like that with the accuracy stack. There's an accuracy bow. So those are the builds that I think will be the best in the end game. As I say, there's probably a lot of other builds that could be discovered, but I don't really think the meta has shifted that much. I just think the way that you build the character is slightly different now because of the passive tree. So there is a lot of exploration for builds now, even though they're like pretty much the same builds. But that's just my 2 cents. I do think in the long run, I would probably be playing Instacker or Accuracy Stacker. And probably an Accuracy Stacker because it just feels really good to attack that fast. Now, the only problem with the Accuracy Stacker is it could be a little squishy. So you will need to solve the defense problem, but you are a Juggernaut, right? So it shouldn't be too bad. But basically, hopefully everyone enjoyed the rundown of 3.16. I did try to make it as short as possible while including pretty much all the information I thought was relevant. And I also threw out some little league starters and some builds that you can aspire to try for as you progress throughout the league. But let me know which builds you want to see as a league start guide, because I probably can't do all of them and I probably will just have to choose 2 or 3, and what endgame build you would like to see me play. But thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll probably try to start making daily YouTube videos again now that PoE has been fixed. But I hope everyone plays this league, and thanks for following and watching. And see you next time. Bye.